My partner stole my idea and built a fortune. Now I'm suing for everything he took. This was supposed to be a joint effort, Eric and I fighting the world together. That's what I had in mind always. My first impression of starting a business with him was that he would be an ideal partner. We were friends from college, matched in our goals, and most fundamentally, had mutual confidence. Or at least, I had confidence in him. In retrospect, there is the benefit of doubt of being able to identify the red flags, the underlying issues that there were. But I chose to ignore them. Why? Because we could. We could, and the future of the world was waiting for us to succeed together. I was wrong, so wrong. 5 years ago is where my story truly begins. It is where Eric and I had just finished college. Both of us had done engineering and were both interested in technology, particularly green energy. We had spent countless nights discussing ideas, drawing up plans, and brainstorming ways to make a difference in the world. And then, one day, while trying to put the pieces together, something struck me. I had an idea that I knew could change everything. It was a novel concept to utilize solar energy, and it was far more efficient and cheaper than any other available option. I still can't believe it until today. The first steps were to outline everything and run through calculations over and over. Each attempt seemed to make me more and more thrilled. This was it. This was the breakthrough everyone's been longing for. I told Eric in the same enthusiasm that I partnered him with at the beginning. He looked thrilled, or so I thought. Our conversation ended with us agreeing to collaboratively work on the idea as a joint project. For a brief moment, I felt relief as if all my worries have lifted. I worked tirelessly day and night, along with Eric, to improve the tech and strategize for the future. My gut told me that huge changes were just around the corner. But, like everything good, change was lurking around the corner. In the beginning, everything was simple. Eric began skipping meetings, claiming he was busy with other projects. He turned into a recluse, avoiding any discussion of his role in our work. I really tried to take a step back, thinking maybe I was being too harsh. We all have bad days sometimes. But the more it happened, the harder it was to suppress my concerns. I had decided it was because of stress. After all, it is a lot of work to start a business. Perhaps this was just the beginning of him feeling the pressure. Later on, there was something I noticed that made me really uncomfortable. Eric had been looking to spend a considerable amount of time with a group of investors. He had mentioned them earlier, claiming he was only doing networking to get us funds. But when I asked for specifics, he would laugh and tell me, "Don't worry about it. I've got it under control." I wasn't concerned until one day while I was walking by, I heard Eric talking to an investor. I had traveled to his place for a meeting earlier, but when I arrived, the door was unlocked. To my surprise, I could hear his voice from outside. His tone was low and sounded like he was trying to keep something a secret. "We don't need him," Eric said sharply. "I've got the plans, I've got the design. We'll take it from here." My heart sank. Was he referring to me? I opened the door a crack to take a look inside. Eric was sitting on the couch with a laptop on his knees. A man in a tailored suit whose face I did not recognize was sitting across from him. One of their conversations was about all the things, investors, patents, and a launch date. Then all at once, I realized. He wasn't working on our project anymore. He was working on his project, my idea. He had been scheming behind my back, chopping me out of the company we built together, and using everything we had worked on for his own benefit. I almost threw up at the thought, but I did not go to confront him. Not yet. I needed proof, to be 100% sure before I made any moves. I told myself that I was fine for the next few weeks. I kept going to meetings, working on the projects, and living life like everything was fine. But, at the same time, I was digging. I started keeping tabs on Eric. I tracked his every move, his interactions with the investors, everything. And the results were nothing short of haunting. He had single-handedly filed a patent for the solar technology. He was meeting behind my back with investors for months, trying to get money for his startup. That was 100% based on my idea. All the plans, the designs, the research that was done, in the eyes of investors, was claimed to be his. How delusional was he? The pivotal moment came when I found out that Eric had executed a large investment deal already. He was confirmed to start the company within weeks, and I wasn't even a part of the conversation. He took it all, the credit, the idea, and worst of all, the future that my partner and I were supposed to build together. My emotions had never been so enraged. It was not simply an offense against our professional partnership. It was deeper than that. Eric had been my friend for so long, and now I had to watch him split my dreams with me and leave me with nothing. But why should he be allowed to do that? I certainly wasn't going to allow it. I called him out one night after yet another longer than usual day. We had a scheduled meeting at the usual coffee shop to tie up some final loose ends, but I knew the moment I stepped in the doors that my mind was set. This was the moment of truth. I said, "Eric," taking a breath in between. My voice was shaking with barely contained rage. "I know what you have been doing." He glanced from the lips of the coffee cup. clearly surprised. His gaze was dazed. What do you mean? Oh, come on, don't be so naive. I retorted and hammered my palm on the table, half dazing myself in the process. Stop pretending you haven't been meeting walking investors. You were so confident in filing the patent under your name that you were bold enough to think nobody knows you were starting the company without me. His face fell ashen. He stared at me for a second, his expression shifting from one of perplexity, as if he was waiting for me to continue, to his mouth opening and closing like a fish taking oxygen from the water. Then, quicker than he started, my God, how quickly he stepped into the cold water. When he seemingly advanced, my skeptical intonations kicked the wonder out of my narrows. I had to, he said, sounding almost robotic. You were not collaborating to the best of your abilities. Everything I did was to ensure the project survived. What? You must be joking. I not only pulled my weight, but this was my idea. I single-handedly constructed this, and your idea. That's what it was, he said, this time offering a grin as he leaned deep into the chair. But I am responsible for the execution. I got the investors. I did all the heavy lifting and priming the project. You were merely a passive participant. I had no faith in what he was saying. The Eric I knew was gone, and in his place was a stranger. This strange person was ruthless, calculating, and ready to get ahead at all costs, which included backstabbing those closest to him. I told you that you have stolen from me, I claimed. You have stole from me everything. Guess what? It's your fault, Mike. Be smarter next time. He told me while shrugging his shoulders. My mouth slightly opened, but no words came out. I stood up too, my hands quite literally trembling with rage. I'm going to make sure from now on that you get what you rightfully owe for what you've done. He simply smiled. Get a grip. Storming outside the coffee shop, I had a plan. Eric was not besting me this time. I have proof, the designs, the research, the documents that state I pioneered the technology. And I will use it now. Honestly, he believed he had took the last game, but he was completely oblivious to the fact that I was not about to squander this opportunity. If he were expecting me to sit idly, waiting for him to decide what happens to my future, then he was gravely mistaken. I shan't go down without a final stand. Congratulations to those of you who have subscribed. You have unfettered access to the most interesting stories at the tip of your fingers. If you are not subscribed to our channel, then unfortunately you will not be able to see them again. That mix of determination and anger was swirling in my chest after walking out of the coffee shop. Eric had turned our dream into a nightmare, and he was fully planning on taking everything from me, from my future to all the hard work I had done in the past. The most painful part of this all was realizing I had trusted the wrong person. But one thing was for sure, I was not done fighting. I refused to let him come out on top. After waking up the next day, I made sure to reach out to a lawyer. A good friend of mine recommended a Catherine Donovan, and hearing what she had to offer over the phone ensured me that I would be able to take my former business partner, Eric, down. I'm prepared to take legal action, I said to Catherine as we met in her office. I set the stage for her, the chronology of the project, how much I had worked on it, and how Eric had attempted to remove me from the picture and claim my concept as his. Catherine gave me her undivided attention, writing down my narration, and when I finished she took a moment to stay still in her seat, tightening her gaze on me. This is your argument, she stated. All we have to do is prove that you are the bearer of the technology and Eric used it without your consent. If this is shown, we can sue him for breach of contract. Not only will we sue him for theft of his intellectual property, but we may even case him for fraud. But the most important thing is that you must have all the documents available, every single research paperwork, all communication correspondence, and all documentation you have in relation to agreements you achieved. I felt a wave of relaxation come to me. I was quite positive that I was accurate in saying this because all of our prototypes, emails exchanged between the parties involved, and indeed, even the handwritten proposals from the brainstorming sessions were captured meticulously. Everything was accurate, saying that I was the original owner who harnessed the solar technology and was being pitched by Eric. I have everything, so there is no need to worry, I stated matter-of-factly. This is precisely what we have done together. Great. Then we'll go for his weakest point, Catherine said, smiling. The following weeks have never been this intense. A constant blur of legal meetings, piles of paperwork, and an unsustainable amount of caffeine-fueled sleepless nights. Catherine and her team chiseled away at the mountain of documentation I had. They took every single document and meticulously organized it into a rock-solid case. This process left me feeling drained, even painfully so at points, but there was also something about it that drove me. I knew this was merely the start of what was sure to be an arduous fight in court. At the same time, I wanted to keep tabs on Eric. His startup was progressing beautifully, it was sickening to watch. He had managed to obtain several crucial investment deals, and he was all set to advertise the company with the very software I painstakingly built. With every passing day, the media began to shift their gaze towards him as he was being dubbed the next promising green energy innovator. I felt my stomach turn. How could he accept so much praise for work that's not even his? In due time, I decided to keep my calm. It was fairly obvious my lawsuit would cripple his plans entirely. We then set off to serve the lawsuit to Eric. That day was quite thrilling. I had been waiting for this moment for weeks, picturing his face when he opened the envelope and realizing I can't let him simply take my life's work. Catherine had told me that things would get ugly and that Eric was not going to go down without a fight, but I was resolved to face whatever came next. My phone rang the very next morning, and it was Eric. What the hell do you think you were doing? He said furiously as I answered. There was no friendly pretense now, just unfiltered rage. I'm doing what's right, I said, making sure none of the anger echoed through my words. Your name is on the paper, but you don't deserve it. You will not get away with this, make no mistake. He laughed that bitter laugh. Pro-constriction? What if you put a crew together? I will tell you let them do it. In short, it won't happen. The investors would laugh you out, let alone my patents. Everything I have is gone, and all you have is a clown suit, which will always be optional, I said, filled with new confidence. It's not as if I don't have everything on file ready. Orders, pictures, even emails that prove you ordered _the device. I won, and now I have an attorney who is ready to make certain that reimbursements will be ordered. Listen to me, Mike. You don't know who you are messing with. You think you can just sue me and tarnish everything I have worked for? I created and built this company. If I wasn't here, you would still be playing with concepts that would never see the day of ease. My blood was boiling, but I kept my voice calm. Eric, it was a we problem. You just decided to make it a me problem at one point. The deeper the lawsuit went, the messier my life became. As Catherine had predicted, Eric wasn't going to take the easy way out. He employed a powerful attorney, and without wasting any time, they initiated a countersuit against me for breach of contract, claiming that my interference with his company's operations violated the terms of our partnership. The media covered the lawsuit, and after that, things went from bad to worse. Out of nowhere, my name was everywhere with a negative connotation. An article came out with the headline, "There goes another bitter ex-partner trying to ruin everything for him," branding me as a frustrated ex-partner trying to destroy Eric's fame. His public relations team did some hard work and turned the narrative claiming that he was the mastermind behind the technology, while I was the one who turned into a remorseful appendix. It was challenging not to feel dispirited. Every day, it seemed that I was being sculpted into the antagonist of a story where I had previously been the protagonist. Business partners and investors who opted to support me were pulling away, not wanting to become a part of the legal soap opera. But Catherine stayed on me. Forget the noise, she said in a meeting. The court will base their decision on the facts, not the news. And the facts support you. She was correct. I possessed the proof. I had the documents, the research, the blueprints that established my ownership over the technology. Most importantly, I had the reality on my side. Next was the first courtroom appearance. It was tough, to say the least. When I entered the courtroom, Eric was already there with his lawyers, and just looking at him made my blood pressure rise. He was calm and overconfident, as if he had already won the case. But I was not going to bow down to his arrogance. It was no longer only about the payment or fame. Now it was about overcoming my barriers. It was about making sure he got what he deserved for everything that he had done to me, to our business relationship, and to the dream we had once built together. Everything was on point during the hearing. Catherine presented our case beautifully along the whole timeline and showed documents that included picture proof indicating that it was I who created the solar technology. On the other hand, Eric's lawyers wanted to say that he was the one who pushed the whole project single-handedly. They tried to showcase that all that I did was provide some rough ideas and he marketed them effectively. No one could stand against Catherine. You could see how Eric started panicking as the evidence piled on him. It was clear that she was systematically demolishing all their claims by pointing out all their logic gaps that are surrounding Eric's story and her documentation that was made throughout the project. Even when the hearing was clearly painful, it was only a foretaste of the prolonged legal undertaking ahead of me. I remained legally bankrupt and clueless about my future at that moment. Yet, the surge of hope I felt was because of the path forward that I could finally see. In the following weeks, Eric's exculpatory evidence, email correspondence between him and some investors, came to my attention. It was shocking, since it was only ambiguous, making it apparent to me that he had been planning to exclude me from the picture long before he cut me in the first place. This corroborative evidence only made my case stronger, thereby demonstrating that Eric's theft was not only opportunistic in nature, but rather premeditated. The shift in media coverage was also remarkable. Journalists shifted their attention to what had previously been off-limits for most, forcing them to examine other instances where Eric had claimed someone else's work to be his own. The crumbling of his once unassailable reputation seemed to have commenced. The image he had constructed was now being shattered by the unrelenting pull-out of investors who had began to lose faith. With all the pushing and pulling on him regarding the pending lawsuit, Eric decided to fight back more aggressively. He took to social media where he accused me of lying, committing fraud, and attempting to use him as a stepping stone. Aside from him still having the possibility of countersuing, he also demonstrated he wasn't one to quit easily. One evening, I was completely worn out from yet another battle in court. As I maneuvered about my empty apartment, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Eric. "We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow." I couldn't tear my eyes from the message. My heart raced. After the web of lies and deception I had gone through, he actually wanted to talk? True, I was totally unprepared for whatever this meeting would bring. What remained indisputable was that I was not about to let Eric pull the strings on me ever again. The entire night, I wasn't able to sleep because I was thinking about Eric and his sudden urgency to meet. Guessing what his reason could be made me anxious. The deceit, the treachery, the court case made me skeptical if he actually was keen to have any sort of constructive dialogue. A part of me believed that it wouldn't be anything short of a trap, an elaborate scheme to trick me, or perhaps even frighten me to make me withdraw from the lawsuit. Not trying to confront him would have been much more comfortable, but deep down, I knew there was still one last confrontation needed. I wanted closure. I wanted to listen and make sure Eric knew that I was no longer scared of him. Making peace was not on the agenda. I did know that I wanted to stand up against the man who had robbed me from my life plans and tell him, in a very clear manner, that I was not going to give up. I met Eric at the cafe in the courthouse the following morning. When I walked through the door, he was already in a corner booth, sipping coffee. It was almost surreal how relaxed and self-assured he was in that moment. To my surprise, he seemed completely unbothered by the consequences of his actions. The man I initially saw was not my old friend whom I had trusted for so many years. He was different. He was cold and determined. An altogether different Eric. "Mike," he addressed me as he subtly nodded his head. "Take a seat." His tone was cold and neutral, but there was tension evident. He was not there to make friends. Taking a seat, I folded my arms across my chest and waited for him to say something. I wanted to hear what he had to say first. I was not going to make the first move. If anything, I came here for clarity, though deep down, I was certain I already had the answer. "Let's get straight to the point," Eric said while trying to shrug his shoulders for a loop. "There is no need for wasting time anymore. You made your claim. You would like to get a share of my achievements. That is okay. I can offer you a settlement. All of this can be closed immediately. It is that simple." I wasn't able to hold back my laughter because he had the audacity to suggest that Eric is in league with him, giving him free money. The quizzical look on my face was masked by the extreme resignation I felt deep in the region of my stomach. I will not deny that there was plenty of anger, but at the same time, everything he owned was a direct result of my concept. I tried my best to stay composed. There was no way I would reel me in. "A settlement?" I said, sounding colder than I wanted to. "You think you can buy me off after taking everything from me?" He sighed as if I was the unreasonable one. "This is business, Mike. Sometimes things don't go the way one hopes, but I am giving you a chance to get out of it. The settlement, which is more than you would receive if we continued fighting in court, is what I am offering. And we both know how long it would take." He had me so furious that I had to sit on my hands to stop myself from moving. He didn't grasp the full picture. It wasn't simply about money for me. It was about him paying for his actions. To put it simply, he built an empire on my sweat, on an idea I nurtured, and now he wanted to walk away unscathed like my opposition was simply a nuisance. "No," I replied, undeterred. "I do not wish to reach a settlement. My focus is solely on the facts. You took my concept. You deceived investors, filed a patent in my absence, and attempted to exclude me from everything we built together. You made the grave mistake of assuming I would simply walk away from all of this." Eric's calm facade cracked slightly, his jaw tightening as he leaned back in his chair. "You tell yourself whatever you want, Mike. This is about business, not the truth. Do you want to destroy everything because you failed to move quickly enough? Be my guest. But listen carefully. I am allowing you the chance to end this on your terms. Take that opportunity, or you will wish that you had." Eric attempting to bully or intimidate me into submission is something I anticipated, but the other side of me is battling in astonishment with the amount he has changed. This was not the Eric I understood. Or perhaps I have been in denial throughout all these years, blinding myself from the reality that this is who he always was. "Regret it?" I echoed with a shift of my weight forward. "The only thing I regret is placing my trust in you. Making a mistake," he muttered with a hint of anger. "Eric, there is no mistake." I stood up. "The mistake was yours the moment you chose to betray me. Now, I am going to sow this, and there is no way you are going to stop me no matter how long it takes." The first time, I noticed a minute hint of uncertainty in his eyes. He was clearly not expecting this. It was evident to me that he had planned to simply bully me, or perhaps throw some money at me. But I was not going to be bullied, and I definitely wasn't going to be bought. With my heart thumping hard against my chest, I walked out of the cafe, not looking back. The conversation had strengthened my resolve. Eric was not just a coward, he was a thief too. But one thing was for sure, I was going to ensure he paid for what he did. The weeks after that were punishing. As new pieces of the puzzle came together, we knew we were headed towards a court war. Catherine and her team did everything within their power to make our case strong, demonstrating in court how Eric had used my idea to build his company and had averted my claim. We had emails, sketches, early drafts of the patent. Everything proved that I was the original inventor of the technology, and guess what? Eric had stolen it. Needless to say, Eric's lawyers pushed back with equal force. The defendant's legal team tried to argue that I was not an active participant and that I sat on my laurels, doing nothing and wallowing in envy of Eric's success. But with the same tactical aggression, Catherine countered each argument, disclosing the lies and contradictions in Eric's story. By this stage, reporters were all over the case. Articles were being published almost daily, some supporting Eric, whilst others tried to get to the root of the matter and reveal more of his unscrupulous business dealings. Nervousness started settling in amongst investors and began showing the cracks in the company Eric had built. And then, there was a development none of us saw coming. One afternoon, while we were getting ready for the next court hearing, Catherine received a phone call. It was one of Eric's ex-business associates, an individual who had joined him earlier in his career but had been sidelined long before I had. For years, the man had remained silent out of fear of the legal repercussions, but now that Eric's empire was teetering on the brink of collapse, he was ready to speak. The man, David, told me he had evidence to show that Eric had previously done the same not only to me, but to several people. He had developed a modus operandi that involved taking other people's ideas, applying for patents under his name, and systematically eliminating all competition. And now David was ready to corroborate his information with facts. This was the breakthrough we were hoping for. With David in our corner, we were about to build an unassailable case. We were able to prove that the entire business empire of Eric was constructed on perjury and deception. The media turned against him in less than no time, and investors completely began to abandon the ship. In a matter of moments, Eric's company, which was glowing in its recent achievements as the green energy sector's new poster child, had collapsed. The last day of court was unbelievable. I watched as Catherine delivered the final summation and showed all the evidence we had gathered over the months. He appeared crushed and pale. He sat on the other side of the room, his lawyers hastily arguing amongst themselves. Several weeks earlier, he had walked into the room with complete swagger and confidence. That was clearly no longer the case. His fear and desperation were palpable. Relief coursed through me as the judge ruled in my favor, awarding me damages and ownership of the technology. I had won. The moment Eric attempted to appeal, it was off for him. He was no longer in control. His reputation had been shattered, his business was on the brink, and no one wanted to give him support. The man who took everything from me had lost it all. In the weeks after the trial, I began to control the technology one had built. It was an eerie sensation, realizing how much I had fought for something. The victory was bittersweet. I had won, but because of it, I lost so much. I lost my trust in people, my friendship with Eric, and my sense of security. As conflicted as I felt, something told me I had done the right thing at the very least. I had defended myself, I had fought, and in the process I secured my future. That being said, Eric had completely vanished. The last I heard, he had relocated out of the country in hopes of rebuilding his life that was at this point pretty much destroyed. At that moment, however, he was not on my mind. In fact, I had completely moved on. I feel so much better knowing that I am in control of my company, my technology, and from greatest importance, my self-worth. And truly, what Eric could have ever taken away from me will never truly matter.